Greetings, unsettled souls. Welcome to a really brief Saturday edition. It seems that the weather and health have failed my two co hosts, that'd be Anne Marie and, of course, David Blake. I'm usually doing news from the science front. It happens on most Saturday edition shows. And I'm Sam Ib, your host of the show The Correct Views, also a member of the Media Speaks, giving it two stories, just two. A little bit of news from the science front. Kit Daniels, Prison Planet. Scientists fear possible Planet X could destroy life on Earth. The interesting thing about this is the way. It's it's known that if there is a Planet X, that most of the really oddball conspiracy theorists out there are wrong in that they have this notion that immediately it's going to come flying out of the Kuiper Belt, pass up all these planets, and run right into us. And that would take longer than you, me, and our grandchildren will ever be here. However, we have found a number of asteroids that could possibly threaten Earth that we did not know were there. And we're finding more and more of them all the time. Here's an artist's rendering of that for everybody. We're finding more and more of that all the time. Much of that may be coming from this area, from this planet. The fear being that the planet represented by this fine bottle is whipping comets around at you. That could be a fear because depending on how it is hurled at us, you might not see it. Um, Caltech researchers Konstantin Batjin and Mike Brown discovered evidence of the planet back in January, which they believe is similar to the size of Uranus and orbits the Sun around 20 times farther than Neptune. And it has been suggested that such a planet could potentially fling comet storms towards Earth. Now, again, it's not necessarily something you need to stay up worrying about every night. I think people that take the news like this in that direction are always kind of creepy. But it does prove that the funding of better systems to detect these kinds of problems are definitely prudent. I would say, again, 20 times further than Uranus is quite a ways out there, so it would be coming at a decent amount of speed if it was to be heading towards us. And if it was of any significant size, we could theoretically be in trouble. Daniel Whitmire, a researcher with the University of Arkansas, said that the persistent evidence of a Jovian mass companion in the Oort cloud, where comets originate, may explain mass extinctions on Earth. The dislodged comets, not only smash into the Earth, but they disintegrate in the inner solar system as they get nearer to the sun, reducing the amount of sunlight that reaches Earth. So not only does it hit Earth, but it also makes it so that the Earth is colder by the debris field that it leaves behind from both hitting Earth and from getting close to the sun, as it mentioned here. Said the only major difference between Whitmire's theory and the theory proposed by Caltech researchers is the length of the planet's orbit. Whitmire suggested an orbit of 27 million years, where Beitchen and Brown believe the orbit is only 10 to 20,000 years. But the discovery doesn't necessarily rule out the influence of Planet X could have on comets, and that's the potential threat to Earth. The idea of a distant, massive planet bringing doom to humanity was first proposed by numerous ancient civilizations, particularly the Sumerians, who said that Planet X dwarfs Earth. And if it's the size of Uranus, guess what? It does dwarf Earth, and they were right. And bombards the solar system with comets every several thousand years, which is absolutely true. It looks like, although it may be doing it at a regular pace, the Sumerians may not have been able to have known that. But more recently, in 1984, astrophysicists suggested that a red dwarf sun, now I'd never heard this before, orbits A red dwarf, it's a sun, orbits the sun every few million years and periodically causes immense comet showers, plunging Earth into cold and darkness that kills up to 70% of life. Never heard that before. The scientists believe the sun's companion is a small dark star known as a red dwarf with a mass probably one-tenth the sun's and an elliptical orbit carrying it into the Oort cloud, the AP reported. Within the cloud, more than 100 billion comets, billion with a B, are flying in remote orbits. And as it passes through the dwarf star's gravity disrupts the orbits of about a billion comets so that they shower down towards the inner solar system. That was interesting. And we're going to close out with news on terra firma here. How many of you have been told that man domesticated dogs and that we made it so that dogs were man's best friend? It looks like the Doggies were first. It looks like doggies have chosen man to be their best friend prior to us having chosen them. And I was happy to hear this here. I'll even put on my special attire for you. Here you go. Moscow. The hunters searching for mammoth tusks were drawn to the steep riverbank by a deposit of ancient bones. To their astonishment, they discovered an Ice Age puppy snout peeking out of the permafrost. In other words, it was preserved by the very elements that you would have expected would have destroyed it. So I'll get rid of this stupid thing and no one's going to watch. Um, 5 years later, a pair of puppies perfectly preserved in Russia's far eastern region of Yakutia and dating back 12,460 years has mobilized scientists across the world. To find a carnivorous mammal intact with skin, fur, and internal organs, this has never happened before in history, said Syringe Fudgergrove, head of exhibitions at the Mammoth Museum of the Northeastern Federal University regional capital of Utusk. Now, let me ask you a question as I slaughter the Russian language. Everything there, I swear. Um, I think it's interesting here that this has never happened before. But I mean, we're dealing with Russia. Most of Russia is frozen to the core. There's probably a lot of such finds waiting to be found in their ground, perhaps more so than in some other area. At the, and the discovery could contribute to the lively scientific debate over the origin of domesticated dogs. When hunters stumbled on the first frozen pump in 2011, they alerted Fyodorov, who immediately flew out to the remote Arctic tundra, about 2,900 miles from Moscow and only 130 kilometers from Lepev Sea, that borders the Arctic Ocean, nice and warm there. Last year, he returned for a more thorough look and found the second puppy close to the same spot further down the slope. Both had died when they were about 3 months old. They most likely came from the same litter, he says. And last week we oversaw the removal of the second puppy's remarkably well preserved brain, the first in the world, he said. Puppies are rare because they have thin bones and delicate skulls. Think about how long this has lasted, friends. The duo have named the dog Tumat Dog after the nearest village to the site. They look for mammoth tusk remains, but also at the dig suggested some have been butchered and burned, hinting at the presence of humans. It remains to be seen, however, if the puppies were domesticated or wild, and the answer could be determined as to whether or not these were grass eating dogs. It says their lineages of wolves that likely gave rise to dogs have not yet been discovered. That's because man-made, excuse me, evolution as it stands is a lie. There is a such thing as microevolution, which is the white moth adapting to become the peppered moth when the environment around it changed. That is true. But there is not macroevolution. Things do not jump from a fish to a man. Things did not evolve that way. Life was created, and it was not created to evolve. Now, if he is saying that it was a microevolutionary jump, maybe, but cross species jumps do not happen. So that's why they haven't found any lineages between the wolves that gave birth to these dogs because it may not have ever happened. But it says what makes the dog particularly intriguing is that it managed to become man's best friend even before humans became settled farmers. In other words, dogs have always liked us. And I would argue that wolves have not. So that's another clear question mark, I would say, in the road. What makes the dog particularly intrigued? Right, I'm sorry, I just did that. It is unclear, excuse me, whether dogs were domesticated in one place or in several places independently, and whether the process started when humans took in cubs or whether wolves themselves gradually drifted to human sites in search of food. Whatever the precise lineage, he says, scientists were going to be busy for some time. The second puppy's brain will be compared with that of modern dogs and wolves. Parasites found on the body will be analyzed, as will the contents of the stomach. When we opened it up, we were very surprised. The stomach was full of twigs and grass, and wondered if maybe the animals had not been exclusively carnivorous. Well, I mean, you will eat anything when you're starving to death. Just ask in North Korea. I'm really I'm not kidding. They eat the grass and the leaves and the twigs and any of the roughage in the area. It looks like it might be happening to them again. Bad leadership, friends. This material is really exceptional and unique, said Mitig Germorpree, a paleontologist from the Royal Belgian Institute who partnered up with Fedorov for the project and came to Yakutsk for to oversee the autopsy of the second puppy. The fact that the soft tissue is preserved will give us much more information compared to those that can be obtained from normal fossils, meaning bones and teeth. It says in closing here the permafrost secrets. He lamented how long it takes to get ancient biological material to suitable labs due to financial constraints, the rugged terrain and the red tape, which sometimes means that samples reach laboratories 6 months later. And that is something that needs to be done. That's why I do these shows. We don't need to be here in 2016 talking about how we dug up animal remains in 2011, but we didn't get these off for stud. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. We have money to go blow it a million other ways, but we don't have any money for something like this, and that's annoying. It's really annoying. Everyone understands that the tissue of a mammoth funa loses its structure with every second passes, even in the freezer. Yakutia's melting permafrost is likely to yield even more treasures in the coming years, he added, saying that the number of reported prehistoric finds has grown sevenfold in the last decade. Warm and wet weather and flash floods have been a big contributor to the thaw. And right now it's 0 degrees there. That shouldn't be the case, he says. So it does need money there to get this kind of thing out. Better transport and technology becomes more affordable. He says locals are embarking on expeditions to explore remote corners. And of course, we know that's true. So it'll be very interesting to see what other finds we have here on our news from the science front. And guys, I'm going to go ahead and likely sign off here. I'm going to be going to the Hanzel and Gretyl show in Akron tonight. I'm going to go not only to see them, they've kind of gone in a satanic direction lately. But the music is as good as ever. Hansel and Gretel are an amazing band. We had the pleasure of opening for them in my band, Passing Time. And I'm going to go check out Two Dead Roses and Syringe, who is also playing this show. So I encourage you to do the same. Thank you for listening, friends. Make sure you share this video, pass it around, and let people know. Hey, every Saturday, Sam does news from the science front, and that I do. Good night, friends. God bless.